Welcome to Up All Night DIY. I'm Monica. Thanks for joining me. It's the Love Corner Valentine Collaboration. C of CJ DIY has brought us all together to share some Valentine crafts. There's tons of inspiration and beautiful decor, so you're going to want to check this out. I'm making a vintage-inspired Valentine Village. It's a large project with lots of details. I'm going to do my best to try to keep everything on track. Let's get into it. I've cut my village from 3/4 inch pine. There are 9 buildings. Each is approximately 4.5 by 7.5 inches. If you watched last week's video, I made a Valentine snowman for my friend Jen. This village is also for her. There's a shop that represents each one of her family members. Since this is a large project, I'll do a lot of the base coating off camera, just for time's sake. I will be using 3 main colors: Ceram Coat Watermelon, that's what I'm using here, Tahiti Blue, and Tropic Bay Blue. Tahiti's the darker blue, Tropic Bay the lighter blue, and they're all Ceram Coat colors. And as always, everything will get 2 coats. I'm starting with the red buildings. This here is the pub, which is the only building that's for the collective family and not for an individual. Okay, so we have 3 buildings that are primarily red, but each building will have sections that are one of the other 2 main colors. This building is the garage, because every village needs a garage. And this one's the schoolhouse, because again, every village needs a schoolhouse. So the reason I'm telling you some of this information now is because I had 4.5 hours of filming that I had to edit down to a respectable length of time. So just out of sheer necessity, some things will be done off camera and other things I'll just kind of mention as we come upon them. So 3 buildings are red and 2 are Tahiti blue. And then I did the last 4 in Tropic Bay as their base colors. I'm sticking to a handful of paint colors for continuity's sake, really. Okay, so let's paint in some of the details. The schoolhouse has a wee bell tower. I'm going to paint the roof of the bell tower Tahiti blue. And there's also a separate piece that I cut that's like an overhang for the lower roof. That will also be Tahiti blue. But before I get to that, I sketched on all of the windows and doors ahead of time. All the windows will get a white base coat. The schoolhouse belfry and the doors will be Tropic Bay Blue. I traced around a craft stick to get the arch of the belfry. It was the perfect size. For the doors, I traced around a little wood plank that I had. That worked perfectly too. If you're not good at drawing or you tend to be a little wonky like me, then that's always a really good option to just trace around something that you already have on hand. For the trees that flank the school door, I'm going to use Americana green tea to base coat them. The other shade of green that I'll be using throughout the projects is Ceram Coat Spring Green. You'll see that as we get into more of the detail. I add an outline to all of the architectural features of each of the shops. In this case, I'm using Tahiti Blue. So as we move forward, I really won't be showing you every single time I outline a window or a door, but just so you get the general idea, this is how I do it. So you can see it's just a basic, simple outline around each feature. Nothing difficult. With Folk Art Floating Medium, I'm going to add some shading to our schoolhouse. The medium is a clear gel, and I'm going to prep my brush by dipping it into the gel, wiping it on my plate to get it into the bristles, and I'll side load by scooping up some Tahiti on the corner of my brush. Just on the very corner. I stroke it on my plate to load the bristles, blending the paint with the medium. This will give a gradient to the color from dark, fading as it moves toward the middle of the brush. With the paint corner of my brush to the area that I want the darkest shading, I'll stroke a few times until I'm happy with it, and I reload as needed. So just anywhere that I think there would be a shadow is where I'm going to stroke. I mentioned the roof overhang earlier. I'm holding where it'll eventually be affixed so that I can add some shading underneath it. I'll attach it shortly. I'll just continue shading all around all of the features and along the edges with Tahiti. All the shading in this video is done the same way, but again, in the interest of time, I'll just show how to load the brush this one time. I will link my shading tutorial below in case you're interested to see it in more detail. I stipple the trees with Ceram Coat Spring Green, just pouncing with a stiff brush to give the impression of texture. I'm adding little hearts to the trees with Americana Carousel Pink. I want this to have a vintage look, so I'm going to distress by lightly sanding the edges, including the overhang, and then I'm going to wipe away the dust. I add distressing ink to the sanded edges with a cosmetic sponge. This is Tim Holtz Vintage Photograph Distressing Ink. I just dab my sponge in, and I'm just going to rub it right along the edge, just like that. And I just continue this until I'm happy with what I see. I attach the overhang with wood glue and a dab of hot glue for that instant grab. I printed these sweet vintage Valentine images on cardstock and I cut them out. I found most of them on Pinterest. I also designed personalized signs for each wee house too. I'll distress the edges with the ink, just like I did the buildings, to give it a more authentic vintage feel. I apply Mod Podge to the back of the image and I just attach it right to the piece. I did spray these with a clear matte sealer before cutting. If you have an inkjet printer, you'll want to do that before you Mod Podge because otherwise the ink will smear. You can use hairspray too if you don't have clear spray. That'll work. Once they're in place, I'll roll over them with my brayer to make sure they're well adhered. So I did the schoolhouse first because it's a wee bit more detailed than the other buildings. For the rest of the projects, I'll show you more of the detailing than the basics, as all of the basics are pretty much the same for each piece. I embellish with heart-shaped beads. These are just necklaces from the Dollar Tree that I cut apart. And I'll add some glitter to give it a little sparkle. I dot Mod Podge on the trees and just here and there randomly. Then I'll shake on some glitter. I have a variety of colors. This is such a pretty pale pink, chunkier glitter. I'll use a variety of textures too. Some glitter will be ultra fine, some standard, whatever you like, whatever suits you. When each piece is completed, I spray it with clear matte sealer to keep the glitter from shedding. For the rest of the village, I'll show you more of the detail work, and I'll jump in when explanation is needed. Okay, we're onto the garage now. Painting in the details to the door, just some simple basic lines. Adding hearts to the doors to give it more of a Valentine feel. I'm shading in some roof tiles here with watermelon. And now I'll use Tahiti blue to shade the watermelon and the Tropic Bay. So now I'm sanding the edges, inking the paper images and then the wood piece, Mod Podging the images into place. Then glitter and bead embellishments, and then I'll spray seal. And so it'll go with each shop in the village. I felt like this needed some glitter in that negative space there. The happy hour tap room is the family pub. It has an awning over the door which I'll drape horizontally, and I'll finish all the outlining of the windows and doors. I drape spring green lines over the window boxes, then I'll highlight them with green tea dots, then pink dots to give the impression of flowering plants. With my silhouette, I cut vinyl lanterns, and before I apply them between the windows, right in that space where they'll go, I'm going to add a couple of light white streaks so that they'll look like they're lit. And now I apply all my shading to all of the window and door frames, as well as around them and along the perimeter of the building. Again, it's really just anywhere that I think it needs a little extra something, or where there would be a shadow. And now the sanding and the inking, Mod Podging, and we'll glitter and embellish. Next up is the photography studio. As you can see, all of the details have been done and I'm on to shading. This is the Don't Blink photography studio, and I'm shading the Tahiti with watermelon. There aren't a whole lot of painted details on this particular one. This one's pretty quick. Inking the images. You could easily do something like this with Dollar Tree houses. I think that would be really cute too. Now I'm Mod Podging on this adorable vintage camera. With a glue stick, I added a backer to this. It's just another piece of cardstock. It's because the very top of the camera hangs off of the building a wee bit, so I wanted to make it sturdier. I put bottles on top of the image to weight it down. It was curling up a bit. I found this adorable little photographer girl on a Vintage Valentine. She is so cute. I'm adding vinyl lamps above the sign, and I'll give them glitter light bulbs. I did a search for hanging lamp clip art, copied them into my Silhouette Studio. I used the trace feature, and then I cut them out. It was that easy. I love my Silhouette. It takes second place only to my scroll saw. Okay, gonna add some glitter to the light bulbs, to the camera, the door, and the girl. And then I'll add some beads to embellish this sign. Next up is the Village Toy Shop, and it's getting a Tropic Bay window box. By the way, I don't think I mentioned all of the windows have been shaded with Tropic Bay too. I don't think I mentioned that or showed it, but they did. It's the basic same deal shading. There you go. There I am shading it now. I know it's really hard to see because the color's so light. Much more noticeable in person. I cut vinyl to spell out toys and games for the window, and I also have a little tricycle that I'm going to put right below the flower box. How cute is this trike? I shade the heart with Tahiti and all of the Tahiti with watermelon. Did I mention that before? I think, didn't I? I think so. The toy shop is for Jen's cutie patootie granddaughter Gianna, so I named it Gianna's Playground. Framing the heart with some glittery dots to simulate a marquee. The glitter I'm using here is ultra fine glamour dust. It's just like a white iridescent. This is the one that I've used the most. Some red heart-shaped flowers for the window box. And now we're sanding. And we're inking. I found these sweet vintage animals that will be the mascot for Gianna's Playground. And I printed up a little open sign for the door. As a finishing touch, some glamour dust. This is the Wagging Tails Pet Emporium, and I want the roof to look like it's got bunting draped over it, so I'm just giving it some wee scalloped white strokes there, and a wee white heart. Let's stripe the awning. When I decided to film me making the village, it didn't occur to me right away that due to all the details and the number of shops that this would be a bear to edit, so I hope that you're able to get the gist of what I'm doing. Let's add some wee red pots for some plants. Let's add some spring green leaves. We'll put a topiary by the door, just a thin line for the trunk, and I used dowels to make the plants. They're green tea, and then I pound spring green over top. Shading under the bunting with Tahiti, around the architectural features and along the edges. I do some crosshatch strokes on the front for some texture. I'm shading the Tahiti blue features with some watermelon. I add the vinyl and the cute images with Mod Podge. It's a box full of vintage puppies and a wee kitty sitting below the window. How cute. And we're sanding the edges and inking. And we'll use a red heart bead for the doorknob. And I think one right here above the window. And we'll add some glamour dust to this cuteness. M's Dance Academy is very similar to Devon's Pet Emporium. I cut vinyl point shoes for the door. How cute. I'll shade and add some cross hatching just like on the Pet Emporium. I add the vinyl lettering, Emily's Dance Academy, do a little sanding, ink it up, Mod Podge on this precious ballerina, and some cascading flowers along the side there. Time for beads and glitter. Wee red heart. And these are like little rhinestones. I'll encircle the heart with glamour dust dots, give it that marquee effect. I put some glamour dust on her tutu and in her hair too. Let's add some to the lanterns also. The last two shops are the anchor stores, Lamar aka Zazus Hole in One Golf Shop, and Jen aka Mimi Sugar Shack. They'll both get large red and white awnings. They're also very similar in structure and layout, but I'm going to start with the golf shop and we'll paint in some details. Some red planters for the shrubbery. The shrubs and the hanging vines from the upstairs windows are base coated in the spring green. Quick curved lines for the vines. I'm adding some green tea lines there too, just for some highlight. Let's do some tea green hearts on the shrubs. And let's add some wee red hearts too. First, I'll shade in some of the details of the facade with Tahiti. Then I'll shade with watermelon for a little extra something something. I'm just following the same shading that I just painted with the Tahiti. You've seen me do this before. I'm not covering the Tahiti shading, I'm more enhancing it with the red. I stick on a red vinyl heart at the top center of the building. And now we'll sand, ink, and Mod Podge. Let's add the hole-in-one sign. I think I mentioned that I made all the personalized signs in Photoshop. This says Zazu's Golf Shop. Zazu is his granddaughter's name for him. And now we need an adorable wee golfer and his wee pup, a wee Scotty dog. And lastly, some embellishments. Jen's an amazing baker, so she gets a bakery/cafe for her shop. And as I mentioned, it's pretty much the same shop as Zazu's Golf Shop, just slightly different details. I've cut a wee coffee sign for the window, and a matching heart on the front of her shop, and a wee heart on the door. I decided to make heart-shaped vines for the window boxes, and a little planter by the door. And now we shade with Tahiti and then with watermelon, just like with the golf shop. a little bit of cross-hatching, sanding, inking, Mod Podging. I love this pink cake. Mimi Sugar Shack. And this adorable teeny tiny coffee pot and cupcake. I painted the coffee pot handle with ceramic coat charcoal. The grand finale, beads and glitter. This is going to be so cute across the top of Jen's fireplace. I know she's going to love it. I hope it inspires you to make your own village. You can make them from Dollar Tree houses, cardboard, cardstock, whatever you got. I love making stuff like this. A little wonky, a little whimsical. I really had fun making it. Many thanks to my darling C for bringing us all together for the second year in a row. Please be sure to check out the playlist for plenty more Valentine inspiration. The collaboration link is in the description box, as well as a list of my supplies. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and all that good stuff. Stay creative, my friends. Thanks for hanging with me. See you next time. Up all night with Monica.